record.
Can I plug in?
Not quite.
Okay.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to change on this so that it goes onto that screen?
Okay. I hope you all can see the survey.
Oh,
The
Try the end.
so you know, not huge statistical significance, but what I was looking for was the negative. If people wanted to do something else, but apparently most people are kind of satisfied with the way we stumble along here. So we'll continue, but obviously, if anybody changes their mind, be sure to let me know. So, a source recommendation. I stumbled on this. This is a fabulous source for graphics. So, if any of you want to do a session, you might look at this. It makes it very easy. And here's the name history-maps.com. And so I've drawn a few things from that. It's subscription, but they'll give you 4 free articles a month. Okay, so the history of Iran, part 3, basically the 20th century. Just to review, here was the Safavid Empire in between the Ottoman Empire and the Mughal Empire. And it was replaced by a bunch of weak Shahs that the British kind of pushed around. The British after World War I were controlling Iraq next door. But before we get to that, towards the end of the weak Shah, there was something called the Persian Constitutional Revolution, which was interesting. It established a parliament, the first of its kind in the Islamic world, beating Turkey and the Young Turks, which came 3 years later. And the institution of press was started then. And it was pretty lively until about 10 years ago. So I'm told by one of our friends who's an expert on that area of the world. They had a parliament and the Majlis, and it was pretty active. And this friend compared it to the British Parliament, which was hard to believe, but he understood Persian, and so said could vouch for it. But then what starts happening in 1911 is a whole bunch of outside meddling. And obviously, at the end of this story, we're going to be very much involved, the United States. But in the beginning, it was Russia. And they came in and sabotaged the functioning of the parliament and helped the Shah disband it. So this was the great game started before that, but this was the latest installment of the great game. And if we have time at the end, I want to talk about one uh, Russian contribution to civilization. This is a very big picture. The taming of the steppes. That started after they got a boost in self-confidence by helping defeat Napoleon, and they turned their eyes south to the steppes. And over the 19th century, they pretty much tamed the steppes. Um,
Don't you mean the Caucasus?
No, the whole steps, because by the final chapter came when the after the communist revolution, they set up the Soviets, and it was in the 1920s and early 1930s that they actually incorporated the different tribes into the Soviet system, which say what you want about it, it was multi-ethnic, and it was gunpowder that allowed the Russians to finally break millennia of the problems with the tribes rolling out of the steppes, attacking established civilizations, in particular the river civilizations, the four river civilizations. So I think if we're trying to understand Russian character, we've got to really go back over 200 years to understand, and this was their main accomplishment. Um, so oil. And obviously, that's all at top of mind now. I'll start the oil story with a familiar face. And it was Churchill who was in charge of the Admiralty at the beginning of World War I, who realized that to power a navy, you needed oil. Coal was no longer going to make it. Steam was, you absolutely needed oil. And he started that reform, and it was going to very much involve Iran. Um, but he had to resign in 1915 after the Gallipoli disaster. In the context of World War I, he was trying to open the entrance to the Black Sea to help the Russians. And the Ottomans were in his way. So he thought he would have to force his way through. And this is the map. This is the Dardanelles. This is the Gallipoli Peninsula. And they wanted to get arms to Tsarist Russia to help the Allies in World War I. And as you remember, it's a complete reshuffling of the alliances since the Crimean War 60 years before. Um, so, but it was a disaster. It was a shooting gallery. The Ottomans had set up cannons. And if you've seen the movie Gallipoli, you experience the drama of that. And of course, this is Mel Gibson, I think, in his first big role.
Hey, John,
So,
just a brief tangent, but Troy is right there too,
yeah,
right? It's just interesting to realize that the battles of Troy, right, are right in there. So
right.
it's an old historical war zone.
Yeah. Okay, because we do tangents at the drop of a hat, here's another bottleneck, Hormuz. Um, and again, just like the Turks commanded the high ground, Iran commands the high ground in these mountains. Kind of like Vicksburg in 1863 for Grant. He had the same problem. The other interesting thing is this Karg Island. Apparently, Trump knows about this for a long time, and 90% of Iranian oil is refined and exits from Karg Island. Now, so you could take that out, but that would make the international situation much worse. This is all very tricky, with the price of oil being of importance. So I think there have been some attacks on the military, but nothing attacking the refineries. Well, we're going to learn a lot more about oil and the flow of oil, but I thought I'd introduce us a little bit to some pipelines. So first of all, the Gulf countries. Kuwait, familiar with that from the war. Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman. And UAE has a pipeline that takes their oil to the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. Saudi Arabia has a east-west pipeline that takes Saudi oil to the Red Sea. And so that's just the boundaries. I like this graphic. It showed how much you really need the Strait of Hormuz. Those pipelines only take a little bit of the flow. So you can see from this graphic that the pipelines fall way short of replacing the flow of oil. This is all the pipelines in the area, and there are a few pipelines heading north to the Caucasus and to the Stans. But the big one I'm going to talk about in just a second goes from Iraq. And Saudi Arabia built this pipeline when Iran and Iraq went to war in the 1980s. So they wanted a more secure diversification of their oil. Iraq, they have a pipeline that goes from Kirkuk, so they're much less affected by that. But it has to navigate through Kurdish land and then Turkish land. So it's a political at political risk as well. But we like maps, so I thought I'd share that. So back to World War I, we know how that all turns out. And in 1921, the Brits, realizing that they need more security in that area, start playing their great game there, and they help put this guy Reza Shah on the throne. He was the Shah that we know best, Mohammed Reza Shah. He was his father. So now the Brits have replaced Russia behind the scenes, and British Petroleum, BP, is centered in southwestern Iran. America wasn't in the game because they had Saudi oil for a lot of interesting reasons, not the least of which was the influence of American missionaries in Saudi Arabia in the at the beginning of the 20th century. It goes back a long time. Reza Shah was an admirer of Hitler, not so much because of the racism and anti-Semitism, but because of his background. Reza Shah rose from undistinguished background, and he saw Hitler as a role model. Oh man! But it plays a role in just a second. So uh, here's Reza Shah, the founder, and he has Mohammed Reza. Mohammed Reza had three wives. Last time, I think we only talked about two of them. One of them was his first wife was an Egyptian, and apparently Ataturk persuaded Reza Shah to have his son marry into the Egyptian royalty for political reasons, geopolitical reasons. Ataturk wanted to set up some grand alliance. Well, that marriage didn't work. And then his second wife was Soraya, and she was Iranian, but ethnic Lur, which was on our list of ethnicities that we looked at. But she was infertile, so they got divorced, and he took on Faradiba. More about her in just a second. But they had he had a daughter, but his first son was Risa, named like the same name as his grandfather. And here's the way things were in 1925 when Reza Shah gained the throne. And you can, for the larger context, let's bear in mind that Israel is going to become a state, and it's really America, and Truman creates that state of Israel. And there's a UN sponsored partition between Israel and Palestine. Just to bear in mind the timeline of that. That starts in 1948. Reza is deposed by the Brits. Hitler has invaded Russia. This is 1941. And Britain, again, wants to ship arms to Russia, but this time it's the Soviet Union. And what they want to ship the arms through an Iranian railroad, but it is managed by Germans. Remember, Risa admires Germany for strange reasons. And Reza refuses to let Britain ship arms to the Soviet Union. British and Soviet troops occupy Iran. And there's talk now of boots on the ground in Iran, possible mobilization of Israeli soldiers and American soldiers. So history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so under pressure from Britain and Russia, Reza Shah, the founder of the dynasty, abdicates and turns the throne over to his son. The son is very dismayed because the Iranian military, which had been touted by his father, Reza, who was a military man, simply collapsed, just ran away. And for the rest of the Shah's reign, it's going to last another 4 decades, he's obsessed with military spending. And boy, oh boy, is America all in on funding the Shah so that there'll never be another embarrassment like there was at the beginning of World War I after Hitler invaded Russia. So here's Mohammed with FDR. Um, Now, we touched on this briefly, but by way of review, flash forward to 1953. Again, it's about oil, and a socialist gains power. So, what we said about this parliament and the parliamentary system that started in 1905, that tradition continues on, and there is a vigorous parliament, and it brings to the fore that political process, a socialist who says, nope, Britain, your concessions are not valid anymore. We're expropriating the oil. And for that, he earned Times Man of the Year. So, an important guy, but that was never going to fly with Britain, Secret Service, and our CIA. And I told you last time how a grandson of Teddy Roosevelt was part of that. Mossadegh was defiant. Where was the Shah in all this? He went to Italy, and he only returned but when everything was safe. But his image was tarnished, irreparably tarnished. It almost didn't matter what he did at this point. So he married his third wife. She was an anathema to Muslim clerics. She had trained at the Paris School of Architecture. You know who else trained at the Paris School of Architecture? Julia Morgan. So much earlier, though. So she was a smart, bright, but Western woman. So the Shah was seen by people like John Foster Dulles, people that realized America with the retreat of Britain from their empire, that we would have to pick up the baton. And so Eisenhower embraced him, Kennedy embraced him, LBJ embraced him, and Nixon and Kissinger more than embraced him. They gave him carte blanche. And this was the Shah's opportunity to spend so that Iran would no longer be an embarrassment on the battlefield. And so we used to be reliant on Iran and Saudi Arabia, but under Nixon and Kissinger said, nope, it's our number one guy is the Shah. And so he had so much money he couldn't use it effectively. But money was never a problem as we played the game in the Middle East. Now, we're going to go back and get the 6 Day War in just a second, but I just wanted to give this through line. So Ezra Klein had a great interview last Sunday, and I'd recommend that you listen to this. Some of the things I say are taken from that conversation. And the interviewee points out that how prosperous Iran was and how well suited they looked. They had good relations with the outside world. The country was going through an economic boom with all this outside investment in arms. And the Shah really didn't have any serious enemies. So, it even had good relations with the Soviet Union, strongest military. Um, Iranian society was opening up, and the Shah was a reformer. There was just one fly in the ointment, and it's the one we already talked about. The Achilles heel, the long tail of history. Um, uh, History's not in the past, right? It lingers on. And they didn't have the political freedom that they'd been striving for even since 1905. So the uh, the Shah was carrying the weight, and every Iranian knows the history. Unlike us, sometimes we forget our own history. Every Iranian knew this history, and the Shah figured that he had to show how strong he was, and he exerted absolute power and didn't allow any ventilation, certainly on the streets, since the Mossadegh encounter. So the Savak was the Shah's secret police. And they were around for more than 20 years. They used torture. They suppressed any hint of movements among students, and they shot protesters, and some of this was at the hands of tutelage from the United States and Britain, where they specifically learned modern techniques. It's kind of a little bit, the service that we provided was a little bit like was provided in Latin America at the school of the hemisphere. So where could Iranian students protest? Abroad. And this was the paradox. Iranian students were absolutely free to go abroad. And the Shah encouraged it because he wanted to develop a technocracy. And so whenever the Shah went abroad, he was met by the protest of Iranian students. Iranian students. And Carter took the brunt of it. Poor Carter, it was like playing old maid. It wasn't his fault. He inherited what was come to pass as an embarrassment for him and for the Shah when the Shah visited Washington, D.C. And so very much the students got swept up in protest and swept into the 1979 Islamic Revolution. It's not like they were Islamic, but these are the little practical jokes that get played in the flow of history. They contributed, but we have to appreciate this in the context of the Six-Day War. I think we got used to seeing how much that influenced um, 9/11 and Osama bin Laden, but Iran too. And so in 19 the Six-Day War, Israel recaptures Jerusalem. And we're used to the idea now, but it's a big deal. It's Islam's third most important city, the location of the Dome of the Rock. So what's the history behind the Dome of the Rock? It's the world's oldest surviving Islamic architecture. Contains the earliest inscriptions proclaiming the Prophet Muhammad. And it's on top of Temple Mount. So Temple Mount, that is the second temple that the Jews built that was torn down by the Romans. You'll remember the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. And an Iranian monarch, Cyrus, helped them return to Israel and rebuild the second temple. So what's on the second temple? The rock, the Dome of the Rock. What's the rock? Well, all three religions claim this rock. The neutral term is a foundation stone. But for Jews, it's the place where God began creation. It's the site that Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac. In the Islamic revision, it's Abraham prepared to sacrifice Ishmael. But in Judeo-Christian tradition, it's Isaac. So a shared tradition, this holy spot. It's so holy that many religious Jews don't go to the top of Temple Mount. But just for Muslims, there's an extra chapter involving this rock. And it involves Muhammad's night journey / dream, taking off from Mecca, and he flies to Jerusalem, the Rock, on the back of a royal horse, where he ascends to heaven. Somebody's got some background noise going. So this is the Burak, the horse that he is flew on to the Dome of the Rock. Well, the Rock, there was no dome. And he's accompanied by a couple of angels. And he ascends to heaven from that rock on, like as if he's climbing a ladder, and he encounters the Old Testament prophets on the way up, which included Jesus. And then he comes back and flies back. So for good reason, Jerusalem, in people's imagination, is the third holiest city. And that's why Israel's recapture of it was such a big deal. There was an interesting special edition of the Economist that looked at the role that the Six-Day War played, and they made the point, and it made sense, that it was the beginning of a global religious revival. It was a domino effect. That conquest had domino effects in the Muslim world, as we just discussed, but apparently also in other religions. In America, there is what some people might call a fifth awakening, beginning in the 1970s. Hinduism. And the current ruler Modi is nothing if not a Hinduist a revivalist. And so the problem is this conquest of Jerusalem is seen as yet another crusade. And George W. Bush stepped in it by actually using the word crusade. And so from the standpoint of Islam, they feel threatened by the plurality that is Judeo-Christian, mostly Christians, but also among American evangelicals. The 1970s saw the rise of televangelists and more talk of the second coming, if only the Jews would return to Israel. And the fifth awakening I talked about, but a big part of the second awakening was the belief, and this was in the 1810s, that if America sent missionaries to the Middle East, that would help draw the Jews back to Israel. And if Jews went back to Israel, then Jesus could come again. So this is kind of strange for a lot of us, but it's certainly believed, and it's believed by our current ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who some of you may remember from politics in previous decades. And again, I'm going to use the phrase manifest destiny. Is Israel part of our manifest destiny, or certainly perceived by some as part of our manifest destiny, which is why we give more money to Israel than we do to any other country. I think Egypt is in second place, just to as a part of a reward for them recognizing Israel so early. So this is a great book, details of the Iranian Revolution, and he makes a big point that the Shah was doing land reform in the 1970s. Still, the students abroad, the psychological mindset, they were not going to change their mind about the Shah. And you hear pundits and students of history say that autocrats are at most risk when they begin to loosen up. And it seems that, according to Scott Anderson, is what happened to the Shah, a tragic figure. So one point I want to make at the after the Six-Day War, the Shah was still prepared to cooperate with Israel. There was a secret Persian oil pipeline, which still exists, that takes Persian oil from Eilat up to the Mediterranean, bypassing the Suez Canal. And that was established before Egypt and Israel came to terms. So the Suez was closed. Um, uh, so the face-off 1978 79, and the Anderson makes the point that remarkably there were long periods of calm where it looked like the Shah was going to be able to ride through. But a couple of medical problems. His number one advisor was dying, and pretty soon the Shah himself would be dying of lymphoma to complete
Oh,
the tragedy. Um, his wife, Farah, his third wife, she actually was the one, even though she was hated by religious Muslims, she had a sense of what was going on the street. She had what we would call the common touch, and she would go out because she had a degree in architecture. She would go out to construction sites and talk to workers. And she tried to tell the Shah. Sometimes he would listen to her, um, but most of the time she wouldn't. Um, she uh, refused to wear the headscarf except when she went into a mosque. Um, and This is her then, and this is her now. She was the biggest source for his book. She lives in D.C. And uh, she had the crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, finally giving the Shah what he wanted most, a male descendant. You remember he had a daughter, but this is his male descendant. And here he is. The celebration of Persepolis. Sorry, I misspelled that. The 2,500 year celebration of the Persian Empire. We talked about it before because some of our members were also there. This is Bob Oxenborough, as we immediately recognize. And this is Iko. So we were in the neighborhood. 5 years later, after we were there, Jimmy Carter and the Shah are toasting each other on New Year's Eve, and it was ill-fated. Toasted there because Khomeini was in the wings. Yes, Bob.
Well, I just wanted to explain briefly what I was doing in Iran at that time.
Good.
I was working on a gas pipeline which took gas from the southern gas fields, which were enormous, north to what was then the Soviet Union. And the rumor had it that where I was working in the mountains in a gorge where the pipeline, there was what's called a scrubbing station, clean the gas off there of sulfur, etc., had to be cleared because there was a migration, the annual migration of sheep herders or goat herders coming down the gorge in the way of the construction of the pipeline. The rumor was, I have no evidence of it, was that the Shah ordered his air force to come in and shoot up the migration of shepherds and goats to make way for the pipeline.
Wow.
What was going on?
All right. All right. Eyewitness to the history. So
John,
yeah,
this is Bruce. I went through Iran in 1967 on a car trip, which we left from Singapore and went to I think I mentioned it before, and ended up in Munich. But we drove across Iran, and so starting in from Tabriz in the I think or this, I'm sorry, it's not Tabriz, it was Mashhad, and then went up at the Gabati Caboose and across the uh, underneath the Caspian Sea, and then down into Tehran through the mountains down into Tehran, and then you got down as far as Isfahan and the Zoroastrian fire temple that I remember being there on the top of this fire temple. At any rate, it's an amazing place, and uh, that was before the 6 Day War had just happened. So we had to have our passports uh, reconfigured because they wouldn't let us in to I think we had Iran, Iraq, Jordan, and we could not. We had to go into Turkey. But yeah, fascinating country and an amazing place.
Yeah, wow, you were there before any of us. Good for you. When we were there in 72 in the bazaar, the number one image on the carpets in the bazaar was of John F. Kennedy.
So,
Go figure. Um, anyway, there were a lot of victims, not just the Shah himself, but many decent people who served him as he was trying to reform. And this poor guy was one of the first executed by Khomeini's crowd. Um, uh, so uh, this is the Shah has lymphoma. He dies. You'll remember he's a man without a country. He's wandering around, and Carter knows that if he accepts him, he does accept him, and it creates a terrible reaction in Iran. And a part of that, of course, is the hostage taking of our embassy staff. But the poor Shah, he can't catch a break at the last 10 years of his life. And he dies in Cairo. Anwar Sadat, I think, accepts him. And his son is immediately sworn in 1980 in Cairo. And he has the same name as his grandfather, so Reza Shah II. And here he is today, and it's interesting. You'll see his picture in various protests along with his mother. This one's in Sweden. That he's offering himself as a figurehead. Obviously, he's not acceptable to, for sure, 20% of the hardcore part of the population. It's hard to know what the Iranian people are feeling, but the interviews I'm hearing with a lot of Iranian commentators is it's 80-20. And of course, they have the same break in urban rural that we do. So
80 what?
80% for getting rid of the clerics and 20%
Really?
for maintaining. Yeah, it seems to be a pretty consistent. Now, there's a selection factor. All the people that we hear being interviewed have come to the West, so who knows what it really is.
Right. I mean, John, the same story is true of Cuba and many other countries where you would think that, Cuba was this horrible country, but people who visit it say that people are pretty happy. And so I'm not sure I believe the 80-20. I think it might be 30-30-30 or something where you have, a percent that likes him, a percent that doesn't, and a percent that doesn't care.
Yeah. The commentators I'm hearing are saying that you're not people aren't going onto the streets because they're still bombing. So active bombing. We really won't know until the bombing phase is over, and we may never know.
Who's bombing?
Israel and America are bombing Iranian infrastructure, military infrastructure mostly, I hope. Well, I
Except for an
hope. I don't
occasional,
hope for anything.
yeah, except for an occasional school here and there.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, very sad. Yeah. So the dominoes started falling. So after Iran falls, the Wahhabis are inspired by the success of Shiite uh, uh, jihadists, and they take over the mosque in Mecca. Um, uh, this is so momentous, and yet there's been so much else going on in the world. We tend not to remember that. But that's what Saudi Arabia up to that point was on a path for more reform, but not after this. And of course, bin Laden takes heart. These were the Wahhabis who took over the mosque in Mecca. Um, and then to make matters worse, Israel invades Lebanon, and bin Laden specifically talks about the bombing of towers in Beirut, uh, and the U.S. support. This is all in the Looming Tower, a very good book, and he quotes bin Laden in that book. So the timeline, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, they inherit all of the Shah's American armaments. Saddam invades Iraq, and so some of American armaments are used to fight Saddam. Israel hates Iraq more than Iran. And we talk about that pipeline and Cyrus, but the sentiment is too bad both sides can't lose. And of course, we get Iran Contra in the middle of all this, so we wind up supporting Iran indirectly without discussion. Uh, and Iran emerges from this war convinced that it's got to have surrogates abroad. So it actively sabotages the two-state solution for Palestine, which I found interesting. This is in the discussion with Ezra Klein. Take a listen. It's pretty interesting. And so they back Hamas in Gaza, but guess who else is secretly backing Hamas in Gaza? Bibi, Netanyahu. Why? Because he wants to weaken the PLO by strengthening their neighbors. You don't hear much about this anymore, but well documented. Thomas Friedman has talked about it in his columns. Um, so the point was made in the discussion with Ezra. Quite often, you find two extremists on opposite sides secretly supporting each other, and that seems to be what happened with Hamas. So here we are. We're familiar with the Iranian crescent of resistance, but all of these, except for Yemen, have been damaged. But amazingly, Hezbollah seems to be returning. So go figure. Um, fast forward a couple of years, we're there to help Lebanon, and the Israelis have invaded, and we just want to provide some security and cool things down. And then an Iranian suicide bomber kills 200 Marines by blowing up the missing half of this building. And so suicide bombers, a new concept. Apparently, it was the minefield, the volunteers to walk the minefields in between Iraq and Iran that created, or at least abetted, this mindset. So, we retreated, but all this is familiar, secondhand to us now, this timeline. And I think the thing that's hurt us the most when the domino gets to 2003 and we defy the UN and go into Iraq, I think that undermined our credibility, particularly in the global South. And of course, it offended Putin. So I think this is where I'm going to have to stop until we return from Spain, inshallah, inshallah, however you say it. And I'll open up for comments.
John, in Illinois, there's an arms storage facility on the Mississippi River that I visited when I was in med school in Iowa, and they had I think it was a howitzer, which had been paid for by American money to give to the Shah of Iran, which was then used by the Shah of Iran against Iraq, but then was captured by it was like it was just like crazy making. It's like we're the largest arms supplier on the planet.
Yeah.
And I think we are it's like if you have a hammer, the world looks like a nail. I feel like we haven't learned. We're just going back into Iran, and as you say, the best case scenario is Trump says, "Oh, we won," and pulls out, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like a quagmire, and and then the religious right wants to bring on the Armageddon, so the coming of Jesus happens again.
Maybe we should have listened to Washington when he said, "Don't get involved in foreign complexities." Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, comment on Israel being the largest donee, receiver of United States largesse, $3.3 billion a year. It's all in the form of arms. Money goes to the military industrial complex, which then delivers the arms to Israel. 3.3 billion a year, which is about the same as what has been consumed in 3 days of the current excursion.
Wow.
Right. Well, and then we bomb the heck out of it, and then we hire Bechtel to go in and rebuild it.
Don't get Harold started. Okay. Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, one other question. When we were in Borneo in the Peace Corps this would be 65 to 67, one of the things that happened there in 65, Sukarno was overthrown, and it was because of the Dallas brothers. I think one of the Dallases was in charge of the CIA, and the other one was the foreign. Was he the defense?
Secretary of
Alan
State.
Dulles was the CIA.
Uh,
Foster was Secretary of State.
Yeah.
yeah, so he had the two of them, and the Suharto ultimately became the victor. They were supported by the Americans, and that became. There's a book. It was called it's called Jakarta the Jakarta method, I believe, and it had to do with the fact that the that's how the U.S. was able then to take over South America with using the same techniques that they were using to overthrow Sukarno, um, and and of course that became Vietnam, and the whole that whole rigmarole.
Yeah. Well, Michael.
Well, I thought it'd be interesting for you to give us some idea of what you expect when you come back in terms of like predictions, prognostications as to what in 6 weeks, isn't that how long you're going to be gone?
Yeah.
What do you think the world will look like in a month and a half?
Michael, do you think I'm crazy?
Well, but I mean, if this war will still be going, if Iran's going to plead and say we're throwing up our arms, we're admitting defeat, or they're going to still be fighting, or Trump is now going to back out because I heard him say I think it was something about I think it was a mistake what we did.
What?
No, he's so erratic. He's the wild card in all this.
Well, but I mean, he's saying one thing today, another thing tomorrow, and so on. And, it's like, can anybody predict what's going my guess is the war will still be going. We'll still be trying to bomb the shit out of them, thinking that all we have to do is bomb them until they finally say, we give up, we're suing for peace. I think he'll still be bombing, but on a very limited scale, perhaps. And Netanyahu's going to claim that they defeated the Iranians. That's my guess. It won't be over in
That
6
sounds like
weeks.
it's a prognosis. Ooh, you're prognosing, Michael. So
Well, I'm just saying, and this has been going on, what now, 2 weeks? And I haven't heard that Iran is saying anything about, can we find some solution? Can we get this over with? And I don't think I liken this. I said, compare this to when the Germans in the Blitz were trying to bomb England in London. And all it did was stiffen the resolve of the people. Anytime we do this, especially without boots on the ground, all you do is you make people say, we're going to fight back. And when you finally put boots on the ground, now it's going to be a guerrilla war. And Trump doesn't want to have boots on the ground, nor do any of the other people. The Israelis aren't willing to commit. So I just think this thing will keep going forever.
Well, I think the people that have the biggest say are the Iranian people themselves, and they're not going to go out in the streets until the bombing stops, and that'll be the moment of truth. Who knows? Who knows? Um,
Why
the
would they go out onto the streets? When they went out of the streets, 30,000 to 40,000 were murdered.
Yeah.
Well, how much is the Basij being hurt by this bombing? And the other thing that's different about this intervention is the Israelis. Mossad has been pretty effective in eliminating the surrogates that Iran had, not eliminating, but weakening. I'm sorry, and that's another unknown. So this could go so many different ways. I pick up the newspaper each morning with, okay, what's next? But you know, may you live in interesting times. History gets made in boluses, and this is one of those boluses. The cards are being reshuffled and will be redealt, and it'll be interesting to look at our hand. But you know, I think you could argue towards anything. There's enough evidence, which means that nobody knows.
No.
Tom.
A couple of things. Thanks a lot for today's presentation. Have a great vacation. Do you have a date in mind when we might be back on Zoom again?
Well, it'll be the end of April, maybe the last Tuesday in April, but a lot depends on a lot. There are a lot of things that, but I'll keep you abreast, and um, uh, I don't know. We're gonna try to just celebrate our 60th wedding anniversary, and it was planning on being relaxed and low key, but it's turning to anything but. It's but we'll see you somewhere in the future, in 6 weeks, and who knows what we have. By the way, I gave you a reference. If any of you want to prepare something, just let me know, and I can send out the notices from abroad. But I'm not going to prepare anything. This is a good time to just take a break, and
Take a vacation, yeah. So it
Have
could
a
be
good
like
time.
late April, early May.
yeah,
Send a couple of photographs.
okay.
And enjoy yourselves.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Get away from it all.
And enjoy the past 60 years.
There you go. There you go. Wave to the audience, Aiko.
You guys have a good time.
Enjoy, John.
Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye.
Send postcards. Send updates.
Will do.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.